Porch Tour is all about moments like this, where you can hit the open road, see beautiful American scenery, roll down your window, and realize you're in the manure capital of the world.
Fuck no.
All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Run Your Mouth podcast. We are here on Summer Porch Tour live with Dr. Krim. Thank you for having us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you guys. That's nice. Yeah.
Dude, if I had money, this is the exact spread I would want.
Oh, this house?
Yeah,
this house is literally perfect.
Yeah.
Well, first off, I did tell Robbie I was a little worried because I was like, cause the driveway is long as hell, and I go, Robbie, if we get murdered, my wife's gonna be pissed. But then we see like the sports car with taxation is theft sticker, and I'm like, okay, this guy rules. Yeah. And then you showed us around, shotguns. I saw your smoker. I'm gonna be one of your runaways that live in the basement now.
That sounds fine. Yeah, man. Come on in.
I gotta say the murdery vibes of Porch Tour have definitely decreased. In that in the early years we were showing up to random spots. I was just telling the other comics, yeah, I know them. We'll be fine. Don't worry. And there were people I'd never met before who just sent me pictures of their lawn. Now it seems like everyone's somewhat been vetted or within the circle of kind of who we know.
And like enough people come too that where like if a murder happens, there's going to be enough witnesses.
Someone with a gun. There's enough people in the audiences with a gun.
Yeah, they're pretty safe at this point.
Yeah, I feel that way.
Because then when you first started them, there was like, you were literally like, I'm going to come over and we're just going to chill.
Dude, the first one I did was in someone's like playhouse in their backyard or something.
You guys would just do like a podcast, right?
Yeah. It's grown over time. Now we do shows. We made an exception because I wanted to do an OG Summer Porch Tour episode of just showing up and, eating someone's barbecue.
Sounds good. I appreciate it.
Can you tell me, I want to get into the barbecue game.
Sure.
How difficult is it to like figure out how to make a decent brisket?
So tonight will be an experiment because it's been a challenge. It's definitely been a learning curve. So the first one I made was not edible. The second one was pretty good, and hopefully tonight's will be great. So, but in case it's shit, we have the burgers as backup, and my burgers are on point.
When you say not edible, like literally, it was like chewing on leather. Oh, interesting. Because I always thought doing barbecue and all that, it's just like even when you mess up, you still have like some decent. But now knowing you got to be careful, it might turn into leather.
Yeah, so brisket's tough because it gets dried out. Like if you don't do it correctly, so
what do you do to avoid getting it dried out?
So one of the things is, and there'll be a lot of debate. So, and I'm not a pro by any means, but there's debate at what temperature you should wrap it up in aluminum foil. And usually I use a little sort of sprinkle some olive oil vinegar on it while it's cooking and stuff.
Have you had any of those moments where you served a brisket and had to pretend like it was good?
Yes.
Like it was just like overly chewy.
Yeah,
this is great, right?
Dude, that's a great move, by the way. Invite people over, intentionally make shitty food, and then like be like, "How is it?" and just glare at them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a serial killer.
Yeah, I mean.
But do you like even with your own friend? Like I would be like bugged out. Like shit, I serve bad food. You would get a kick out of it.
No. Actually, truth be told, I would be so anxious because I'm like, they need to know I can fucking cook.
Right.
Yeah.
Cooking's like an intimate thing where you want to impress people with what you've made.
So that's why I made the burgers, because I know that those will be great because I've done it enough. But so we'll see how the brisket turns out for sure.
I gotta say, underrated side, or to me, the most underrated side for brisket is like a good cabbage, like not quite coleslaw, more like in like a vinegar style coleslaw.
Well, Laura made that.
Hell yeah, best day of my life. What are we doing podcasting here when we could be eating brisket with coleslaw?
Yep.
Yeah. We could combine them and they could watch us get the itis.
Yeah.
That would be tight.
We're moving in, so it's not even naps on the couch.
Yeah, we do live here now. I forgot to tell you that.
So I thought it would be fun for the episode to bring out the least healthy person I knew. Yeah, maybe
Andy.
we can figure out how to fix Andy.
Yeah, I'd like to. So my goal is to make it to the end of the week. How do we do this?
To make it to the end of the week, well, you have what, like 6 hours left, maybe
sure. Okay,
8.
Okay, maybe I could probably make it to the end of the day. Let's try next week.
All right, to make it to the end of next week, to be healthy, I think it's just making smart lifestyle choices.
Mm-hmm.
So,
because it's more of like it's not like you can't just have that one quick thing. It's more about like long term.
Would you recommend honey buns for a hangover? Because that was Andy's move.
Honey buns for a hangover? I'm not sure I've heard of that. Usually,
it did feel great.
You should actually start a brand, Andy's
hangover cures.
Yeah, and it's like geared for hangovers. I've actually seen Hostess and now has like donuts with caffeine in it.
Really?
Yeah, I haven't tried them yet, but they have like now donuts that have like a full cup of. So I guess you don't get sleep. It's like having a vodka Red Bull. Like you can consume it, not get sleepy.
I've had espresso brownies and they were fucking.
That
banging.
sounds delicious.
Yeah,
but that's
amazing.
a flavor that makes sense.
Yeah.
This is just adding caffeine to blueberry donut.
That's my favorite type of marketing, or not marketing, but just like making shit where you're like, fuck it, put the fucking caffeine in the donut.
Yeah,
I don't know, dude.
Yeah.
Let's see if it works.
Just add it.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Good.
No, so we do want to drill you with some doctor questions.
Hit me.
So let's start with this is the most interesting topic to me. I don't know if anyone still cares, but you're on the front lines of medicine. Any more vaccine injuries to report to us? Anything else that you may have seen, or not anything that you would like?
Not so for me. I really haven't seen. For me personally, I haven't seen any vaccine injuries, and the COVID that I've seen has not been bad. Now, my wife would tell you a different story because she was
or for the vaccines
for COVID because she was working front lines, and so there was a lot, but mostly it's sort of the people that you would expect. Right. So people with underlying medical conditions, people with who are older and stuff, and they were hit pretty hard. But young and healthy, not so much.
But now it seems it's funny because now they're almost reporting that hey, over 65, but it seems like we're kind of at the same place we were a year ago.
I don't know. I think the culture has kind of changed in medicine as well. I mean, you see less people being as concerned about it as.
No, it's finally transitioned that everyone's kind of like, hey, we're done with this.
Right.
But it's interesting because I think they said that we're at 5 times more infections than we were at this time last year, and that's with less testing because now they're not pushing for testing in the same way. I do think we're at less deadly variants, but you're kind of at the exact same place of the older people that the vaccines were supposed to protect. It's not really doing all that much for them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can get the vaccine and still get sick, obviously. So.
Right.
And the new boosters, I think
they're not even recommending it.
Well, the protection is what, 6 weeks? Is that right? All right. So about
fingers crossed that it's 6 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks. Yeah. So I'm looking for my backup there. So, but because my wife, as I said, is a doctor as well. So I
just pretend like I'm a doctor.
Yeah. But so they don't last, and how long that immunity lasts, who knows?
And now they're finally talking about that it's not just the you'd have to help me out on this. It's not just the immunity, but it's also the T cells and the other stuff. And so, this was something we were talking about a year ago, that the single protein spike isn't going to help for the variants.
Right.
And then Pfizer had a funny story where we're going to come out with boosters specific for the variants, and I guess they just shelved that concept because it doesn't appear to be happening, at least as of yet.
So that would make the most sense. If you really were going to develop a vaccine, you would develop sort of like along the lines of the flu vaccine. Right. So people get the flu vaccine, every year there's a different variant, and you try and guess it. So typically for the flu, it starts around New Zealand, Australia, and that area, and then it moves west. And so they have some lead time to be able to develop whatever vaccine they think is vaccine for whatever variant.
It's like a demon. It just comes out of the woods of New Zealand and starts traveling. Why does it start there? Just seasonal?
I guess I would think so. It's somewhere in that area, and then it just sort of slowly moves around the globe during the flu season. So.
But every year, whatever the flu variant is, kind of gets kick-started in New Zealand?
Well, I don't know that is 100% New Zealand. It could be Australia. It could be somewhere in some of the Pacific Islands or
wait, every time
Indonesia.
I get the sniffles, it's because New Zealand can't hold their shit?
That's probably correct.
Damn.
Although I got to give a shout out because we lived in New Zealand for a year, and it
beautiful.
is fucking amazing. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's where all the rich people buy their emergency houses.
You can't buy an emergency unless you're in New
You got to
Zealand.
be super rich.
Well, no, unless you're a New Zealand citizen, they don't let you buy land there.
Yeah,
You
why
can't
don't they
own land.
want new people in New Zealand?
They are. It's
Racist.
really well. No, you want to hear a story?
It's
So
fine. Every country is.
Yeah,
we just
yeah.
pretend not like Japanese don't like immigrant. Like every
Yeah.
country's kind of xenophobic. It's the way the world is.
yeah, when we were living there, they a lot of the migrant workers in New Zealand are actually Asians, mostly Southeast
Right.
Asian, and so. One of the what do they call them? Master MPs, members of parliament, said something like, well, we have to have them come because they can pick the kiwis the best because their hands are so small.
Yes, dude.
They have the most delicate hands. And so so he was arguing for immigration, but in a very racist way.
Hey man, it's practical.
Wait,
I
like
guess.
the main crux of his argument, they're like, they got them tiny hands.
That
We
was the
need
main
them.
crux of his
I've
argument.
been
yeah.
arguing for that for Asian massage parlors, so it's a similar argument.
Exactly, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
one's got those soft, delicate hands.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
All right, next doctor question I had for you is I've noticed, at least in my own town, a change in. The starting point for me would be, I don't know if you ever read it, but George Reisman's got a great essay on healthcare, and he talks about that the two biggest drivers of healthcare costs are, one, that we created insurance, and he kind of breaks down how insurance drives up healthcare costs, and then two, he talks about licensing laws.
Well, so both of those probably have a role. There's the biggest costs in medicine are at the beginning of life and at the end of life, right? And so, and in insurance is, if you track, so Lyndon Johnson sort of started Medicaid, Medicare, all that kind of stuff. And if you look at the rate of rise of the cost in medicine since that creation, it's uncomparable to as if you look at it before the creation of Medicaid and Medicare.
So you're saying it rose higher than inflation.
Right.
Right.
And so one of the things, if you look at something in medicine that has not risen that, and that's mostly cash pay, is plastic surgery.
Right.
So the costs in plastic surgery have risen with...
Because there's no insurance in that market.
Right. So a lot of it is you're paying cash
And government's not going to pay for it.
Exactly.
Oh, so is the biggest thing that when you have the backdrop of basically government-supported demand, so there's a minimum threshold for pricing that the government's going to support, which means that you can't really have prices coming down.
Well, yes and no, but think about this. So think about what motivates people. So what motivates people is money, or to get money, to gain power, to gain wealth. And so if you think about it, so the government comes out with Medicaid, Medicare especially. And so you have doctors in the late 60s were like, hey, here's this whole new source of revenue. Whereas before, if let's say Andy came to me as a patient, and I knew Andy, I was his family doc since he was like a little kid. And he's like, hey, I'm really having trouble, blah, blah, blah. Maybe I'll charge him a discounted rate, or just waive my fee, or do something like that. But what happens is when you have insurance as a role, that's a third party. So it's not just me and Andy. Now it's me, Andy, and the government, or me, Andy, and the private insurer.
Right.
So now I'm like, well, fuck it. I can charge whatever I want because it's not Andy that's going to have to pay it. It's the insurance company. And so now there's a constant battle between sort of physicians and insurers about how much the market can handle, right? So in the beginning when Medicare was first formed, doctors would just raise their prices through the roof because, again, it's not Andy paying for it. It's not Robbie paying for it. It's the government paying for it, right? So it's the same. Think of it as sort of like what happens with student loans. It's the same thing, right?
You basically, the way I've described it, you're just creating credit asset bubbles. You're making more money available for whoever has the product. So they just go, oh, there's more money available. I can charge more for this now. This is great. You don't actually help anyone. So the example that Reisman uses is like if we all went to a restaurant and we're going to split the bill. So if I walked into a restaurant with 40 people and I might go, oh, I'm just going to eat bread because I don't have any money. But if I know that I have to pay for your steak, I'm like, well, then I'm going to order a steak.
Right.
And so everyone's kind of demanding the best or more than what they needed every time because they're not actually paying out of pocket for it. And the result is just ever increasing costs.
Yeah, and that's part of it. And then there's also become, like an over reliance on testing, and some of that also has. So yes, I agree with that. But one of the other things is if you think about like legal action, like if you get sued for malpractice, you're not facing a jury of your peers. You're not facing other physicians, right? And so like there's a fear of missing something. Let's say a patient shows up and you're like, well, there's a saying in medicine, when you hear hoofbeats, it's horses, not zebras. But we have to be afraid of the zebras, because if you miss a zebra and something bad happens.
Well, that's been my experience when I see doctors, is that it's a mixture of they can bill for tests, so they might as well. And then it's also they have to protect themselves from any liability, almost like beyond what you would feel was even at risk. You know what I mean? Like, because that 1%, or like the 0.1% that they miss can be unbelievably expensive.
I don't know, Rob. If I was a doctor and I saw your bald head, I'd order every test.
There you go. Make sure. Absolutely. No, because that has been my experience, is kind of you get these tests run and then you get the bills in the mail and you're like, what the fuck is this?
Right.
And then your insurance company, you know, at a minimum, they're going to leave you to do the paperwork or to reach out to them about why they didn't cover it. And then you end up with a medical bill that you never pay, and your credit goes to shit. That's my experience.
Yeah, no,
I
just had that when I broke my pinky, and I got the medical bill for the fucking ambulance, and like,
you took an ambulance for a broken pinky?
It was a workplace thing. So they had to do
And he's fat, and they put him in it.
He wasn't,
you know, he's
he
just
couldn't
like,
walk?
yeah, no, it just showed up, and he's like, all right, I guess this is my ride
now.
now.
Sliced open. There was a lot of blood. It was pretty icky.
Okay, all right.
No, but it was a workplace thing, so like they had to do. But the ambulance ride was just a ride to the hospital, and I got the bill. It was like $3,000.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
Along the lines though of what you were talking about with the insurance, so I found in my own town, there used to be all like independent doctors. Now they're all under the hospital, and I think that's as a result of the insurance costs.
So not so much. So a lot of it has to do with regulation, right? So it's everybody is supposed to be on electronic medical record. Everybody's supposed to have like malpractice costs. Everybody's supposed to have, and if you add up all the costs, it's very, very, very difficult to be a private physician and cover those costs.
Right.
So if you have your own practice and you have to cover malpractice and you want to get an electronic medical record and you want to stay up to date, and all the mandates that come down from government, it almost kills you to meet that demand. And then the other thing that I want to say regarding like ambulances and your pinky. So people think that the AMA is like the doctors union, and the AMA, American Medical Association, is not the doctors union. I don't belong. My wife doesn't belong. I think probably less than a third of physicians actually belong to the AMA, but the AMA writes what they call the RVU codes. So if you show up to my office and you have a broken pinky, and I look at you and I say you have a broken pinky, here's some buddy tape, just tape them two together, that's a $600 charge. Now, if you're an elderly patient with dementia, heart disease, diabetes, everything else, the highest charge that Medicare will reimburse for that, if I spend 30, 40 minutes with you, is $100. So the incentives are wrong. So that's why people don't go into primary care or internal medicine or pediatrics, because you're paid less, and you, in my opinion, do more of the challenging work. Like, it's challenging to get people to want to, it's easy to throw pills at people, right? You can get them in and out fast. Here's a pill for your diabetes. Here's a pill for your cholesterol. It's hard to spend time with the patient and say, look, let's look at your lifestyle. Let's look at the factors that are creating these underlying circumstances, and let's go from there.
So just to go back to, if you had something, go for it.
Oh, no. When you said that, I remember when I was like out of college and I was feeling depressed, and I went to the doctor and I told him about it. I barely talked to me. I literally was like, I'm feeling sad, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna put you on this. Have a good day.
Right.
So it is yeah.
And by the way, the idea of talking to anyone about their sadness without finding out their sleeping, eating, and drinking habits and exercise habits is literally insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't ask me any of that.
I'm not saying that there isn't depression and maybe medication can help someone, but if you haven't had a conversation with, wait, so you're up till 4 a.m. playing video games, you're drinking, you never exercise, and you're eating McDonald's every day. Why don't we start with that?
Yeah,
no, 100%. I literally just started doing CrossFit with my wife,
nice.
And I noticed the belly getting a little smaller.
Nice.
And it immediately boosted my mood for the rest of the day.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's because things like that. And also, if you eat shitty, it like can make you lethargic and fucking sad and shit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, food is medicine, and like your lifestyle is medicine, and then the other thing too is like some people come from really, really shitty circumstances, and to just walk into a room and write a prescription without sitting down and talking to them, like who knows what's going on? Maybe they've been raped, maybe have a shitty marriage, maybe there's 100 possible things that could be going on, but unless you sit down and take the time to talk to a patient, you're never going to find that stuff out.
Right, and we know that there's a mental element, so the
Absolutely.
idea that you're just going to like have a conversation, for example, oh, you got high blood pressure, here's a medication, and like we'll go extreme example, you were raped last week.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe you don't need a pill that's going to maybe you got to like be seeing someone to address the fact that you just had a traumatic incident.
Right.
And I remember on top of that, they give me the pill. They give me the prescription, and then they're like, "All right, we'll see you in 3 months, and we'll adjust it from there." So it's just like the most hands-off version of that.
Right.
Yeah. Bill.
All right. So what you were talking about with, I guess that it was, there's so many costs on like it's almost like a compliance game, that there's so many compliance costs that it's very hard to be an independent practitioner. So to my eye, that also kind of creates the environment where, and I think maybe you saw a little bit of this with like COVID treatment, that you kind of can't go, hey, I think that these other medications might help you stay out of the hospital, like an ivermectin or a hydroxychloroquine. Like it was very much so, hey, there's one approach to medicine, and since everyone's kind of within these systems that you got to be working with your hospital, and you can't afford to be an independent practitioner, it's kind of top-down orders. So that would be my macro view. So I hand it back to you. Have you seen a change in medicine over the last 30 years that would get in the way of better care because of kind of, the conglomeration of independent doctors under like, single larger entities?
So I think it depends on the entity to some. So I would say that there are definitely sort of predatory organizations that sort of are, they want medicine to be cookie cutter, right? Where everybody practices the same way and everybody does the same thing. But fortunately, not all of them are like that. But the ability to practice independently and still be supported is becoming rarer and rarer. So I guess, yes, I think there's been a change in that. One of the examples that I'll give is I did work for a group that saw, there used to be a lot of places where you could go that would just give free care, so in inner cities. And those have turned into what they call FQHCs, which stands for Federally Qualified Healthcare Center. And so they're all driven by rules-based care. So now, you can call up, let's say a patient goes into one of those centers and might need something done with their heart. Well, then you're waiting till the doctor can see you. Whereas, when I did it, when it was, free care, or you were doing sort of charity work, I could pick up the phone, call my local surgeon, say, hey, it's Doc Krim, John, his house burned down, his one kid's sick, he lost his job, he has no money. Can you just take him in and do the surgery and get him fixed? Sure, no problem. And you'd waive those costs. But now waiving those costs, like let's say you came in and it's not just overcharging that they're looking at. Theoretically, undercharging is also fraud. So if you came in and had a long laundry list of problems and I was like, dude, Robbie can't pay for this bill, and I would down code the visit, they would look at that as fraud.
It's that weird thing where they want everything in the system. Like they'll claim like, we'll help you out, but they want to be able to make the evaluation of what you should be receiving help for.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially. And so in terms of like alternative drugs, like that was one of those things that, and you've seen the studies and the data, and there's been a lot of talk about that, and you never really know. Like, I don't think anything ever got to the point where it was tested enough. And so for me, science is one of those things where you should always be willing to question and always be willing to ask questions and to always look for the alternatives. I mean, one of the classic cases is like H. pylori, right? So there was a doctor that truly believed that H. pylori, that there was a bacteria that caused stomach ulcers, and nobody believed him. So he actually ate It wasn't, people say he ate fecal material. It was a culture from something he got from fecal material, and he swallowed that and developed a stomach ulcer. That's how. So
and then he treated it to
yeah,
prove that he had a treatment for it.
Right. Yeah. So like you have to be willing to question, always willing to grow. Like I don't think in medicine, like the one of the biggest changes is when I started practice to where I know now, we treat things vastly different. Right. And so I think that will continue to happen. And so to say this is it, this is all there is, that's not reality. And it shouldn't be reality, because if it is, then I weep for future generations, because we're going to just still be practicing medicine the same way as we did now.
Got it. All right. So now I wanted to hit you with some specific bad habits that me and Andy have.
All right.
Because I do find sometimes when you have the education of exactly what the consequences of what you're doing,
Sure.
then you could be like, all right, well, I shouldn't do that. So we'll start with this one. I'm a big pre-bed eater. And when I say a pre-bed eater, I mean because I don't like eating when I'm out. So I'll wait till I get home, which is sometimes late at night, and then I eat a big ass meal.
Yeah.
How bad is that for my health? Like what is going wrong when I do that?
So you really want to have those calories. I mean, so if you're doing something like intermittent fasting, you really want to have those calories kind of earlier in the day, because it gives you the fuel. And if you're eating in bed, well, then you're just sleeping, and so your metabolic rate decreases. So you're not going to process those calories as well as if you would eat them earlier in the day.
Right.
So it'll just contribute to abdominal fat, and for men, that's one of the things that causes a lot of heart disease, diabetes, things like that.
So you end up storing, but let's say you don't eat breakfast type thing. Does that?
So not eating breakfast is fine. They used to say you have to have breakfast, but you should try and get those calories in at least, I'd say 4 to 5 hours before you go to bed.
And eating a giant meal before bed and then not eating breakfast doesn't balance out?
It does not balance out in the same way. Because if you think about it, all of us have what we call. Now, there's a way to cheat that a little bit.
Oh,
so all of us have. So all of us have so all of us have what we call a resting metabolic rate. That's why you see someone and you eat the same thing as they do day and day, and you're skinny and they get fat or overweight. So that's the difference in your basal metabolic rate. Now, so how do you change that? Is you lift weights. The more muscle you have, the higher your metabolic rate is, just sitting still. And the basal metabolic rate is the rate at which you burn calories just sitting still.
Really? So there is a way to boost your metabolism?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Is there sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, no, so there's cheats too. Like you can do it through caffeine or other things like that. Some of the weight loss drugs do it. But the easiest, well, not the easiest, because it's hard work to work out, but is, the more muscle mass you have, the higher your metabolic
So what
rate.
are the other chemicals other than just putting on some muscle that will boost the metabolic rate? Was that the word?
Yeah, so caffeine,
okay,
methamphetamines, Adderall. Now you don't want to start doing meth, though, because then your teeth will fall out. And so you might be good at an OnlyFans gig for that, but probably
do you
when
think long-term Adderall is bad?
So I'm not a big fan. So there's been a push, since we really decreased how much we're prescribing narcotics as a that I've seen an increase in the use of things like Adderall and Ritalin, and I think long term that doesn't give you good effects. I mean, it's going to have cardiac effects, especially as you get older. Right, it's going to predispose you to what we call arrhythmias, irregular heartbeats. And other
big picture. Tell me if I'm wrong on this. Big picture, I find that essentially the way that the Adderalls and the Ritalin work is that they are triggering your adrenaline gland, that they're replicating, because I have ADD, and so if things are going haywire, it's exciting. So what it's doing, it's like triggering your brain chemistry as if you're in a catastrophic zone, even though you're just sitting down doing a spreadsheet. So all of a sudden the shit that your brain would never do, you can actually handle. But the negative effect of that seems to be that it just depletes kind of adrenaline and other chemicals without a good way of kind of you know what I mean? It just kind of targets particular chemicals and burns them. Almost like if you did ecstasy, you feel real good, but the next day you've kind of burned through a lot of your dopamine and serotonin.
Sure. So
am I right at all on that, or am I just totally
No, so people with ADD, there's a curve, right? And so it's like a parabolic curve, right? So it goes up, there's some people at the 98th percentile, and sometimes some people at the 2nd percentile, and then there's people in the middle. And so people with ADD actually have less adrenaline release,
Right.
right? And so by giving them that kick through things like Adderall actually moves them into the normal space.
Oh, so it's almost like a person with low testosterone.
Right, exactly.
Oh, so the ADD that you're experiencing might be that you actually have your body's not releasing enough adrenaline.
Yeah, there's some other chemicals involved
Right.
too. So yeah, I should have prepared on that. I didn't know.
No,
we were
that's
hitting
all
with
right.
that.
I mean,
So,
we're freewheeling.
yeah. So yes, but basically it moves you. Let's say you're in the 2nd%, it'll move you more in like the 40th or 50th.
Now, if that
percentile.
was true, theoretically, isn't that something then chemically you could test for? Because it would seem to me like the ADD thing, it's more the checklist system,
It is a checklist
which
system.
is bullshit, dude. You
It
can
is
give me
bullshit.
literally any check, and then also the drug companies, they literally through the the MSDMR or whatever that thing is, but they lobby so that
DSM-4.
DSM. Thank you. I knew it was a bunch of letters.
MSD.
I was close.
Yeah.
They lobby for basically less things on the checklist. Like if you get a 15-point score, now you get diagnosed. And then the Shire, they're a bunch of evil motherfuckers. They started pitching, even taking it for weight loss, which 3 or 4 years ago would have been abuse of the medicine.
Right.
But anyways, back to what we're saying. Instead of a checklist system, if it's a function of adrenaline, couldn't you do like a testosterone test and just go?
I'm sure there would be a way to test it, but
That
I
should be
don't
your
think
next
there is a
clinic,
test.
dude.
Yeah, maybe
you
it
could
should.
bypass all these. Go for it.
Oh no, I was very curious about the thing you were saying about with like when you have ADD or ADHD with the adrenaline. Is it you're not? How does the adrenaline then affect you not being able to pay attention? It's like
So,
you're not able to get.
So you're like scatterbrained. It usually means you don't have enough going on that to get the brain to work in its normal function range. So by giving you a little bit more, it moves you more towards the normal range. Whereas people, if they're in the normal range, take it, they might go on to more of the hyper range and to get scattered. So it's a range, right? And you want to be sort of somewhere in that 50, like probably like the 40 to 60% range to be.
Are there
quote,
ways
unquote,
to
normal.
boost your like adrenaline on your own?
Well,
Short of like, you know.
yeah, so there's a lot of behavioral health. They do like cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectic therapy and things like that that can sort of help non-chemically get you out of the ADD. And usually ADD is not a diagnosis of a single diagnosis. Usually people who have ADD also have other underlying, what would be DSM-4 categories. Although the funny thing is in college I had a course that was taught. Do you know who Thomas Zotz is?
No.
So he was a big believer that all mental illness is a myth, and I had a class taught by
did
his
he write
daughter.
the book, The Myth of Mental Illness?
Yeah,
I've read
he
exactly
did.
half of it.
Yeah.
I need to finish that book. It's one of the
Yeah.
ones that I read half. And
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't agree with him completely,
Right.
but his point in that is that there's no such thing as mental illness. It's just who they are as a person, right? And so mental illness is defined by someone who falls out of what we call societal norms.
right.
Right.
Well, that's like Doug Stanhope has a great. It's his best bit. If you never heard it, you should go check it out. It's on No Refunds.
All right.
And I believe that what's his name also had a similar bit. But anyways, that they'll keep all the drugs legal that keep you producing.
Yeah.
And that you might just be describing what's an interesting character trait that they're basically medicating so that you can work a boring office job.
Sure. Now, there's truly some people who I would say are definitely
Fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of those people who are crazy, and I this is not an absolute, and I'm not saying that medication couldn't help them, especially for shorter periods of time in developing better habits. But I think for a lot of them, they embrace their crazy, and then it becomes more of like the natural state and the cycles that they live within. More than it's like really a chemically induced, and I'm not saying that you can't, if you were to break out of kind of the cycles that you're in with medication, that might help you, but it doesn't, I don't know. I feel like I've interacted. I mean, I've never lived in a mental institution, so I haven't dealt with people that are that crazy, on that level.
Sure.
But it does seem to me like sometimes people embrace their crazy a little bit, or like when they're feeling good, they're partying harder. You know what I mean? Like there's some things that you can kind of do that will amplify the cycles that you're living in.
Sure, like you're talking sort of more like a bipolar patient,
Yeah.
like that is in sort of a manic stage. And then when you're in that manic stage, you feel on top of the world and everything is great and you can't do anything wrong and you're the best person. Your shit doesn't stink, and that really the crash after that is pretty awful for them. So,
Right.
But like. When I was in medical school, I worked at a VA hospital, and that was some of the saddest mental illness I've ever seen.
Because that's all like the PTSD.
PTSD, yeah. I saw there was a African-American black guy. He was in Vietnam, and he believed he was Richard the Lionhearted, and he believed he was white. I know it's kind of funny, and
It's terrible.
No, it's all right to laugh because if you don't laugh, sometimes you'll cry.
Right.
But he got admitted because he took a wire brush and scraped all of his skin off because he wasn't black. He thought he was white. Yeah. And then there was another guy who believed he was still in the war zone, and sometimes he was fine, but sometimes he'd walk down the hall bobbing and weaving, and if you didn't bob and weave with him, he'd tackle you to the ground, and not because he wanted to hurt you.
He wanted you to be safe.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
I just saw a video of that. It's intense. There was a dude who had a flashback while they were just going to like the supermarket, and he's like crouched down, and like people are trying to help him, but they're like, nope. They're like, you got to take it slow, and this is a big deal.
Do those guys also take hallucinogenics? Because I had a kid that I had met who ended up in a mental institution because he was convinced he took like acid for too many days in a row, and he thought he was a famous rapper.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like he totally like I guess I don't know what he unlocked in his brain, but he thought that he was a famous rapper.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some psychosis that can be unlocked by that stuff. We don't know. I mean, so Johns Hopkins and MAPS is doing a lot of work on sort of the psychedelics and stuff, and so they're using them now for treatment for PTSD, but we just don't know enough because they've been, and that's the other thing, like, they were banned for so long that the research really hasn't been done. So what the harms are and what the good things are that can come of them, we don't have enough data. So
Andy, any specific activities that you engage in that you're curious to know how harmful they are?
It's most of the shit. No, I'm trying to think. Well,
how bad's boozing?
Well, it'll put pounds on, and over
Right.
time, like, that's a terrible way to die. So if you really, really drink hard and you drink hard consistently, it's going to mess up your liver. And dying from liver failure is a miserable way to go out.
What level of alcoholism do you have to be at though to hit that?
It really depends on some of it's genetic.
Right.
You could drink for years and years, and then suddenly your liver goes. But then the other thing that can happen is you get a disease called Wernicke-Korsakoff's, and that affects your brain, and it makes you. It's called confabulation, where you just make up stories that you think are true, like saying you're a famous
So you become
rapper.
Bert Kreischer.
Yeah.
You just become awesome because you think that, everything's happening.
They're very
By the
interesting
way,
to listen to.
No hate on Bert. He's fucking hilarious.
Yeah,
but
he is.
you know what you really then need is you need a dad that's an alcoholic so he can plow forward and tell you what your personal threshold is.
So yeah, that would give you sort of the genetic
Like a
basis,
benchmark.
right? Yeah, exactly. You could figure it out from there. Yeah.
But like, let's say you're like me and Andy. You have one or two drinks on your weekdays, maybe as much as 4. And then weekends you're out doing comedy and maybe you hit like a 6 or 7 threshold.
Yeah, What if you're drinking every day, but you're not getting like
Lit.
drunk every day?
You're having a beer or two.
So they'll say like the standard, and is probably more is say, I think it's for men it's somewhere between 10 and 14 a week, and for women it's between 7 and 10. And if you drink more than that, you're put in the quote-unquote alcoholic class. But I really do think it's not as simple as that. I think it's different for every person.
Right.
And it depends also on what you drink. Let's say like you're drinking beer. Well, that's going to have a lot more calories.
Right.
And that's going to put on abdominal fat, which can lead to metabolic syndromes where your cholesterol goes off, your sugar goes off, all that stuff. Whereas if you're having like a standard drink of like a whiskey or a rye or something like that, that's less likely to that's less calories that are going in.
Right.
So, but long-term alcohol use, if you keep it to 1 or 2 a day, you're probably fine. If you're hitting it hard on the weekends and it's like a couple weekends is fine. But if it's like every weekend, then it's probably not as good.
Do those rules apply for smoking cigs too?
So for cigarettes, like if you're smoking when you're drinking, I don't know that there's enough data. I mean, basically, if someone sees you smoking a cigarette, they're gonna nowadays they'll yell at you, right? But and then there's always the cases. But yeah, well, let's go back. So nicotine's an interesting drug we brought up before. I mean, there's some data that says it might protect against some Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. Now, other people will say, well, it protects against Alzheimer's because it kills you before you can get it. So the stuff that's in nicotine and stuff that's in a cigarette is probably the stuff that's really bad for you. So all the stuff that goes into the making of the cigarette and things like that, those things that you're breathing in and sucking in are really not
theoretically,
great.
if you were just like on nicotine lozenges for life, that's probably not a bad stimulant. It's like coffee.
So it's probably not bad, but again, just like and even coffee itself. So let's say coffee, Adderall, nicotine, they're all stimulants.
Right.
Nicotine is very, very addictive. And so the thing with nicotine is long term is it can affect your heart and it can affect electrical pathways in the heart and more likely to cause arrhythmias. Same thing as like Adderall or too much caffeine. Like if you
I already have a murmur, so I might knock it back into a normal rhythm.
Yeah, maybe. So murmur is different than an abnormal rhythm, though.
No, I thought that's what it is. I thought of like an offbeat. No.
No, a murmur is like your heart goes lub dub, right? And so an arrhythmia is lub dub, lubbity dubbity dubbity dub, right? It just adds an extra beats,
yeah.
right? Whereas a murmur is lub dub, lub sh, lub sh.
Right, it
lub,
takes
sh.
breaks.
Well, no, it's just an extra sound. It's like turbulence in a creek.
Right.
So there usually means like there's some sort of valve disease where the blood's not flowing normally.
You think I got shitty valves?
You could have a shitty valve. You might need an oil change.
Go for it, Andy.
I have a question. Let's say theoretically someone on this podcast recently found out he has sleep apnea and he really doesn't want to get a CPAP machine because he still wants to fuck his wife. What would be some good steps to not have to get a CPAP machine?
Hardcore exercise and weight loss. That is probably the best thing. And there's actually a new medical procedure, and I don't know enough about it, but it's called Inspire, where they put in a device, implantable device in the back of your throat. It's a surgery, and it
sounds way creepier.
Yeah, but apparently it works.
CPAP machine. My dad has one. Firstly, my dad, loudest snore he ever heard, and it was great as a kid because like if you're trying to like sneak around in the house, you knew that he was asleep.
Yeah.
You could like time it to his snore. Like his snore like reverberated through the whole house.
You're tiptoeing on the
snores.
snores?
Oh my god, he was the loud fucking snore. But the way I'm claustrophobic, the idea of going to sleep with a thing over my head that like could turn off or someone could fuck with like that sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah.
I just worry too because I move around, or I should say this guy theoretically moves around a lot when he sleeps.
Yeah.
And it's just, I know you got to like sit there and like lock in. And
well, the problem with the sleep apnea though is that you're never getting the REM sleep, so it makes it harder to make those lifestyle improvements because you're not really ever rested.
So if the guy on the podcast who was diagnosed with sleep apnea would use a CPAP device, that guy would probably find you're sleeping better, and because you're sleeping better, you're more awake during the day and you increase your metabolic rate. And most people who go on a CPAP device actually end up losing weight.
Yeah. Because I find like on the nights when I don't sleep, you end up chasing carbs more because you're irritable
you're hungry.
and like you're looking for. And then if you need the CPAP machine, I assume your entire life is almost in that groove of like not really having gotten sleep.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely would probably help. And the other thing is it would probably help with, especially if you want to sleep with your wife, it would probably help your erections.
There you go.
Sure.
So you just need the right pitch. You're like, hey, listen, I know that I'm now sleeping here wired up to machines like an old man, but my dick's going to be better.
It's going to be crazy. The machine's going to pump a lot of strength down there.
Yeah,
as long as we're talking about dicks, how bad is taking Viagra as a 34-year-old man?
I mean, you can do it for fun. I mean, it's basically a vasodilator.
Right.
So the only thing would be is if you would happen to have, say, like a bad heart.
Right.
And you took it and you didn't, something happened to your heart and you went to the hospital and they're like, oh, we're going to give him nitroglycerin. Well, that would kill you.
But you'll end up with like shittier boners sooner in life because you cheated the system and took Viagra younger?
No, it's fine.
Because Viagra's so good.
It is.
Yeah, it's my newest favorite drug.
Good.
Yeah, you don't even need the other ones. You're just this one's way better.
Right.
Andy, any
for
other...
all those nights alone in your room, is that what you're trying to say?
Exactly. I really like to impress myself.
Look at that thing. It's huge.
Robbie's just all about setting records.
Yeah. Ooh.
They say no one could watch this much porn. Well, how since we're talking about sleep and stuff, is 8 hours as important as they say?
Oh man, you're talking to someone who sleeps about 5 hours a night. So if I had my druthers, I'd get I think a good 8 hours probably would help.
Yeah.
And in general, that's the goal people
Don't they
should
say you
shoot
need
for.
less though as you get older?
Well, man, that depends. So what happens as you get older is you sort of people will say you sort of revert to baby stage,
Right.
where you're up and down like a baby. A baby's awake for a couple of hours, asleep for a couple of hours, awake for a couple of hours,
That's what I
asleep for a
do.
couple
Suck
of
more
hours.
titties.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. Yeah, exactly. That's why, with the baby formula shortage, they're trying to increase the wet nurses, which also helps the elderly.
Nice.
Wait,
Yeah,
elderlies are sucking on wet
Yeah.
nurse titties?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they have to have a nurse to come and help them change their diapers.
Oh,
Right?
I was like,
So
okay.
it's an
Oh,
extra.
dumb for
It's a
that
bonus. You
joke.
missed it.
I knew there was a
Yeah,
joke in there.
yeah,
I didn't
all
quite
right,
catch
all
it.
right,
All right.
that's fine.
And then from working
It was
here-
the delivery was off. Sorry, I'm not a professional like you
no,
guys.
no. It wasn't a bad joke. We're so focused on the medical stuff.
No, I'm locked into like, please save my life. I don't
So-
have time to hear jokes.
In your practice,
Yeah.
amongst let's just say like 65 and older, like what percentage of what you're treating are the result of people's lifestyle? Like what is like the consequence of the bad lifestyles that like because more often than not, this is what ends up happening. I've had this experience. You have a father, grandfather, someone else in your family, something happens, you're like, oh shit, I do need to be healthier. But for the most part, it's like everything else, you put it out of sight, out of mind. You're not really thinking of the consequences 30, 40 years from now. We've got bad time preference. So give us the warning. What is coming at age like, because you see it. Or maybe it's
Yeah.
all genetic. You get skinny people who are...
So there's definitely a genetic component, right? There's a genetic component to cancers. There's a genetic component to kidney disease. There is sometimes a racial component as well. There's depending on like how hypertension can affect you. So the warning would be that it would be a good idea to clean your shit up right now, because I think probably about 80% of what I see could be fixed if you got your lifestyle together. So.
And that's even once you kind of see it, there's still an opportunity to put people's
Oh my
habits
gosh,
are
yeah.
so ingrained.
Yeah, I've had some incredible success stories where people came in, and type 2 diabetes is usually a disease that you get when you're carrying a few extra pounds.
Right.
Right. And so, and I've had people completely come off their medications, stop everything because they focused hard on diet and exercise and really changed their life. Same thing with cholesterol. And it really is, it's a celebration. And so one of the things that I think, again, you need to have the time to talk the patient through it. You can't just walk in and sit down and,
Hey, high blood pressure, take
right.
this.
Yeah, exactly. And high blood pressure is another thing that you can get under control. Watch your salt intake, all that kind of stuff. So focus on healthy diet. And there's so many different diets out there. And I mean, my argument for, why there's so many different diets is, one, again, it's genetic. So not every diet is going to work for your particular ethnicity or your particular genetic history. And the other reason why there's so many different diets is sometimes people find one easier to stick to than another. So,
All right, your wife left, so the vaccine's killing people, right?
yeah. everybody died with the vaccine. She is my boss, by the way.
While we're on the topic of diabetes, Steven, our non-scientist wonder boy, is obsessed with the drug metformin.
Yeah, and how so?
So he believes that for a lot of individuals living an unhealthy lifestyle, even before being diabetic, metformin would actually help your body not process what you're eating into fat, better process it, and that this is the most wild part of his theory, is that metformin almost works in the opposite way of testosterone, and so in his opinion would slow down the aging process because it's like slowing down cell growth. I believe I'm giving you the nutshell of what I was able to extrapolate.
So metformin's a great drug. It really is, especially if you're pre-diabetic. The problem with metformin is a lot of people can't tolerate it because it gives a lot of people diarrhea. So
Well, that's my life anyways.
Yeah, there you go. So it wouldn't change. But so there is a long-acting one. But yeah, I'm a big fan of metformin. There's a condition called polycystic ovarian disease. And so usually it happens, it happens to ladies because of the ovaries.
And Andy.
and Andy because of his ovaries.
I have a pussy.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's why Robbie hangs out with you, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Sorry. I don't know where to go from here. Okay. So no, I don't have. Steven, you're non-resident scientist. I don't have enough information. I have to look at what he's talking about.
And then,
first.
but he also does believe that the people engaging in like the TRT, that would
Testosterone
probably
replacement
be
therapy.
advanced cancer and general aging.
So testosterone replacement therapy, yeah. I mean, so if you're taking that does have a lot of risk, especially cardiovascular risks is
Right.
one of them. Cancer is definitely another one, especially prostate cancer. But prostate cancer is a very slow growing cancer. So as long as you catch it in time, it's usually not fatal.
You just have to put fingers in your ass, right?
That's right. Yeah. Actually, if you don't want to do that, you can get an MRI. That's why when you go to the doctor, you always want to look at their hands. Nice small hands.
You can ask for an MRI instead of having them put.
Well, your insurance probably wouldn't pay for it, but you can do an MRI of the prostate, and you can also do a rectal ultrasound to take a look at it.
then
so-
they have to shove that whole thing up your ass.
Yeah, yeah, nothing you haven't done before.
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
that's
you
why.
know, right?
I'm just practicing because I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. You're sitting by yourself. Your wife is
Yeah.
out for the evening. In my case, and
There
you're
you
like,
go.
huh? I have a. Never mind.
I
I'll
have
tell you a
gloves
funny
here.
story.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. One of these times, I'll
Yes.
tell you a funny story about a
Things-
breast pump machine.
All right. I know because you live in this nice, beautiful Pennsylvania area. You see a fair amount of Amish people.
We do.
Do they live healthier lifestyles? Is it something that like they're not drinking as much and you can see a tangible difference, or not really?
Oh, Amish drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a.
But like, are they eating organic, or they're just like they'll go to the store, buy Hostess with their farm money?
So it's really interesting. So I love my Amish patients. They're some of the sweetest. They actually have a wicked sense of humor as well. Very dry, sort of
Right.
almost British, but even drier than that. Like they'll say something and you won't quite catch it, but they're very,
Like my
very, very
jokes.
funny. Yeah, you're slick, but your jokes are awesome. What are you
Thanks,
talking about,
buddy.
Robbie? Anyway, they eat a lot of what I would say would be organic food. That's a whole long discussion, man. But in general, I think
or
no.
worthwhile.
So I think their lifestyle. I mean, they work really, really hard, but they're probably also might have a little bit of genetic predisposition to some underlying heart disease and high cholesterol and things like that. So I don't know that they're necessarily. I think the lifestyle is healthy. I don't necessarily know that en masse they're a healthier population.
Do you think the organic stuff, in short, is it a scam?
So, like the actual label organic, if you're going to a grocery store,
It means
doesn't really
nothing.
mean anything.
Right.
So, like if you're buying from a farmer that you know, that's far better. So, like I said, I told you before, like one of the benefits of being in family medicine is I know people who have like farms and I know where the stuff comes from, and so and a lot of times it ends up being, that beef that we're gonna eat tonight, that's $6 a pound. Now it used to be expensive for burger, not
Right.
anymore, but that's $6 a pound for like, prime rib.
Grass fed, the good
Right,
stuff.
exactly. Yeah.
Now, Stephen had another, and I will have Stephen on again. He's
I
our
should used to
wonder
put us
boy.
both
Yeah.
on together and stuff, and we
Fine,
could have a
absolutely. Because
conversation.
his other
Yeah.
theory, which I thought was fascinating, was that within a range, because government has mandated like fortifying wheat with vitamins and minerals, that for this essentially it's calories in, calories out, and the idea of like you needing to eat your vegetables or needing to eat greens or eating certain things over other within a range, it's kind of a farce.
Well, I mean, you can really just take multivitamins if you wanted to get down to it. So like eating greens, eating fruits, eating things like that are probably somewhat healthier for your digestive tract. But again, if you look at it, it's the processing of the food, and they're over-processed, plus everything else that goes into certain things. So when you were talking organic before, I do think that herbicides and pesticides matter. And we can get into a whole long thing about what's green and stuff. So I think eating vegetarian or eating vegan actually might cause more global, quote unquote, global warming or planetary damage.
Right.
Not necessarily, I think, whatever. But because of it, all that herbicides, pesticides, if you look at hot zones and like the amount of spillage into waterways from those chemicals is atrocious. So I think we're meant to eat meat. I think we're here to eat meat. I think we should eat meat.
Oh, you're actually saying that raising cows is
Right.
probably not as bad for the environment as the investment in eating green and the way that it.
Exactly.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
So
Yeah.
cow farts aren't gonna kill us.
No, I doubt it.
Take that, Yang.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when I knew I didn't like him. He was like, "We might not be able to eat burgers," and I'm like, "He's not getting my vote."
No,
Like,
I
I'm
know.
Not
with
at all,
that.
dude.
No.
That's a crazy man.
Yeah.
All right, 2 more questions left for the doctor, but let's start with Andy. Was there anything else that you wanted to?
Yeah, there was something we were talking about, just like general knowledge on health, and I'm very curious from like what, like, so if you take the, like, what the average person, because like you just see there's such bad like eating habits and exercise habits and shit like that for the average American. I'm always wonder like because I know for me it's like I know a lot of info, but I just have such bad habits and I just choose to do the wrong thing. But I'm like curious. I'm kind of rambling. I'm sorry. I'm kind of
You're
curious.
fine.
Like, what's the how far is from what the average American either knows or does is off? How far are they off from what they should be doing?
So the average American. So I think some of it. I think they're far off. I think we're really like susceptible to marketing, and so fast food is quick and easy. And I think the stuff that comes in fast food is not very good for people in general. So I think if we could focus less on that and focus more on eating healthy and living a healthy lifestyle, we'd do far better.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and then any other general tips that you had for the average run your mouth listener? Something that
General
you
tips.
think they should know from Dr. Krim?
Something you should know from Dr. Krim. So I think, okay, so I'll tell you something. So everything is negotiable, right, in life. And so even in medicine, it's negotiable. So let's say you go to your doctor and you get a large bill. You could call them up. And so instead of getting sent to collections, you could say, look, I don't have the money to pay this right now. I'll pay you $5 a month
Right.
until it's paid off. Or like, hey, I know that this is what the cost is, but I'm sure you don't get that from the insurance company. So can we negotiate the price down? And so that's one of the big trips. And the other thing is, I would say go in and get a physical. But when you find a doctor, you want to find a doctor that's going to sit down and spend some time with you and ask questions about you. And if they're just throwing pills without sitting down and finding out about you, maybe that's not the right doctor for you.
Dude, I haven't done a physical in like 6 or 7 years.
I do them once a year because of my job, but that's it.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
Should probably do that. All right, and then last question for you. I know that we've converted you and you're sheath wearer.
Yeah.
Can you give the doctor's endorsement for sheath underwear?
It definitely is supportive. One of the things that actually can happen is because the pouch, and I think I talked to you about this, is like one of the conditions, especially younger men can get, is a condition called testicular torsion,
Okay.
where the testicle actually twists on itself and dies. And so by keeping it secure in that nice pouch, I don't know that there's any medical data behind it, but my theory would be that it prevents testicular torsion.
So if you got a young kid with flappy nuts,
I would say you probably
you
should
might
wear
want
some
to strap
sheath.
him into some sheath
Exactly.
so that everything's calm and collected.
Ooh, I got since
Yes.
since we're talking about balls.
Okay.
No, it
That's funny no matter how old you are. I coached soccer for a while,
Yeah.
and you just say the balls, and then the
Yeah,
coaches
yeah,
laugh, the kids laugh. Get the balls.
Nah, I've been on nuts. I feel like nuts is more
Nuts?
fun.
Nuts?
Yeah.
That
Testiculars?
feels like a throwback. What you calling them? But no, I remember when I was a kid, the myth was always that Mountain Dew would lower your sperm count. Do you know if there's any truth to that?
I don't know, but Mountain Dew's shit, man. Why would you drink Mountain Dew in the first place?
Reminds you of the good times.
The good times?
Yeah, we could stay out late and
Mountain Dew?
run in the fields. And
You
let
ran
me
in
drink
fields
my
as a
Mountain
kid?
Dew. Oh my god.
That's terrible. Don't drink soda. That's if you want a tip, don't drink your calories.
There you go.
Like, don't drink any calories except for like beer every couple.
Right.
A couple beers every once in a while. But like
What about
honestly,
seltzer? I drink a lot of seltzer. Is the carbonation bad at all?
Yeah,
no, seltzer's fine.
Okay, I
Yeah.
drink a lot of
I've been
Yeah,
seltzer.
getting
seltzer's
big into
fine.
seltzers.
Yeah,
Yeah, but drinking calories, if you want to lose weight, stop drinking calories. Black coffee and water.
black coffee and water. I drink the occasional Red Bull, but I can get
Yeah.
rid of it.
Yep. That would be my big tip for you.
All right,
Alright.
Andy, what do you got to plug? I didn't do a
Uh,
good job introducing you at the top. I just assumed everyone knew you.
It's all good. Check out my podcast. Me, Nate Marshall, Lamerly, Panties in the Mouth. New episodes every Thursday. on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, all that shit. And then if you want to hear me rant and yell and play video games, twitch.tv/Andy Malafarina. I go live most Sunday evenings and other random days. I have a lot of fun over there. Please come hang out with me.
What about you, Dr. Krim? You want to throw anything out there?
Do I want to throw anything out there? My son has 2 books out for sale on Amazon. So his name is Duncan J. Krim. So
We
if
just
you
had
look
him
him
on.
up, yeah,
He did a
So-
breakdown of abortions for us.
yeah,
What are
yeah.
his books on?
So the one book is sort of an apocalyptic future.
Okay.
It's a great book actually, and the other one is sort of stories he wrote to his fiancée when he was in the States and she was in Peru. So
Is he
it's a
married
collection
now?
of poems. No, they're still waiting for her to get a visa to come here. So
You
yeah,
just got to sneak her in. They don't
Yeah.
deport you once you sneak in.
yeah, supposedly, but yeah, but the problem is she's Venezuelan. So if they would find her, she doesn't go back to Peru. She goes back to Venezuela. So we're trying to avoid that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It'll be a good addition to the hostel that you're running.
Yeah,
here.
I know. We can't wait to have her here. She's incredible. She actually, so I can speak a little bit of Spanish,
Okay.
and we knew she was part of the family because I was trying to talk Spanish to her, and she goes, Ryan. And I said, yes. She goes, you speak Spanish like Dora the Explorer. And that was the funniest shit I ever heard. I was like, fine, you can bust my balls. You're in the family.
There you go.
Yeah.
Is she gorgeous Venezuelan?
She's